UFOs near nuclear weapons facilities have for decades discouraged the use of such weapons. Drones and UFOs the size of cars are being witnessed for hours in New Jersey near a military facility and interrupting civilian airplane routes. A roundup of drones and UFOs witnessed in the US and Britain last week with clear pictures. Is this all part of a false flag operation by the deep state, or have positive extraterrestrials started showing up? Jared Isaacman, a billionaire civilian SpaceX astronaut, has been nominated to be the next NASA administrator. Members of Congress received a classified UAP hearing but can't disclose shapes of UFOs. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the December 7 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. We have a few stories today that really caught my attention that have exopolitics significance. So let me go over those, and then we will talk about the webinar, the next monthly briefing webinar that will be held later on today. So this will be a little bit of a shorter week in review. So let me begin. Here is a X or a tweet by UFOB, who made the point or the comment that current UFO observations, regardless of their origin, appear closely linked to nuclear weapons. It's unlikely a coincidence that these sightings coincide with NATO and the EU adopting increasingly aggressive rhetoric. Let's hope the message is understood. Okay, this is a very important point here. I mean, UFOs have for decades been seen near nuclear weapons facilities and have interrupted or interfered with them to make them non-operational at critical times or at any time. And this has been happening in the US and in the Soviet Union, today the Russian Federation. Now, why is this important? Well, because for the first time in many, many decades, the threat of a nuclear war no longer appears to be such a remote possibility because of events that have been happening in Ukraine, where Russia has updated its nuclear weapons posture. The United States has changed its nuclear weapons posture. And there's fears that if the United States continues along with Britain and France to supply the Ukraine with long-distance missiles that can penetrate Russia, that might be a trigger for a nuclear war. So people are very concerned about that, and it appears that UFOs also appear concerned about that because according to this particular person, UFOB, these nuclear weapons facilities are increasingly being buzzed or are being monitored by UFOs. And that's very, very interesting, especially given what I'll be talking about later today in my monthly briefing. Now, here is another story. This is from UAP1. Dr. Eric Davis says, in case they, UFOs or non-human intelligence, decide to become aggressive, we're screwed. We don't have aircraft that can match them. Really? I mean, that is Dr. Eric Davis making a statement that the UFOs, the NHI that are operating these vehicles, these spacecraft or these UFOs that can go many dozens of times the speed of sound, that we don't have anything that can match them, according to Dr. Eric Davis. And then not in our cards yet, but as Lou Elizondo states in Imminent, everything we've seen in the 20th century could be a prelude to an invasion. It is a possibility that we cannot ignore. Wow, that's interesting. So Eric Davis is saying that these UFO sightings that we're seeing, they perform way above conventional aircraft or those craft that have been declassified or known to the general public, and of course known to Eric Davis. And that because the UFOs can perform much more powerfully and aggressively than than conventional craft, that, as Lou Elizondo has made the point in his book Imminent, that we may be on the edge of a UFO invasion. So there you have it. Eric Davis supports Lou Elizondo on the idea that we could have a UFO invasion. The UAP topic during the current flap and beyond is a topic that must not be ignored by those in leadership. It cannot be ignored. All right, so what is being said here is that essentially UFOs that are being witnessed near military facilities, near nuclear weapons facilities, that they are actually a national security threat. So it's the diametrically opposite view of what I just expressed earlier, that traditionally UFO activity near nuclear weapons have acted to kind of dampen down the possibility that such weapons can be used. Now, the existence of these UFOs near sensitive military sites, nuclear weapons facilities, and so forth, that could all be a prelude to a UFO invasion, according to Dr. Eric Davis and Lou Elizondo. Now, this is what I wanted to point out that I think is very critical here. Now, they've stated that NHI UFOs may invade humanity sometime in the future, and two, that humanity does not have the advanced aircraft technologies to protect ourselves. So those statements are both incorrect. So regarding the first statement about a UFO invasion or a non-human intelligence invasion, Jim Mars, author of Rule by Secrecy, and William Bramley, author of Gods of Eden, have put together compelling evidence in those two books that negative NHI, or extraterrestrials, took over humanity millennia ago, and that this has intensified during the World War era. More recently, and this is the new data that's come to my attention and many others, is that positive non-human intelligence have arrived en masse, and they are here to help awaken and liberate humanity. And many of the craft of these positive extraterrestrial ships are being seen and photographed. Now, regarding the second point, that we have nothing like these UFO craft in conventional or in classified programs, non-human intelligence spacecraft, they were first successfully reverse engineered by Nazi Germany during the Second World War, and US corporations, military services, the intelligence community began reverse engineering their own anti-gravity craft in the 1960s. So the US Space Force, that was officially launched in 2019, is an attempt to white world technologies that have been secretly in operation for decades. And I've written 7 books on the Secret Space Program series and 3 books on the US Army Insider Missions series, both of which talk about these secret space programs where advanced technology, spacecraft using anti-gravity torsion fields and other advanced exotic technologies have been successfully developed and are being used. So, yeah, Eric Davis and Lou Elizondo, they are putting out incorrect information that at best can be called misinformation. At worst, they are part of a limited hangout. Here's a story or an interview I did with James Gilliland, Freeing Earth from Negative Extraterrestrial and Deep State Control, an urgent message for humanity. Now, James Gilliland, he's been active for 40 years, sharing information about extraterrestrials, about his contact experiences. He's shared hundreds of photos, videos of spacecraft that have visited his Essetti ranch in Mount Adams. And he has been able to establish communications with these extraterrestrials of a variety of different physiological characteristics. You have the tall human Nordic blondes. You have these feline beings. You have these beings that look like they're kind of like Sirius, or, well, maybe not Sirius, but these beings here with the elongated skulls. These blue beings, they could be some form of Andromedan. So, in other words, there are many different positive or benevolent extraterrestrials that have been making contact, and James and many others have had those contacts, and he's been sharing his information for 40 years. I think he's written 5 books now discussing these extraterrestrial contacts and shared his information. And unfortunately, the climate in which we live is one where human or individuals who have made contact with positive extraterrestrials are simply ignored by the establishment media, ignored or harassed by the intelligence community. And that's a shame, because it means that instead attention is focused on instances of negative extraterrestrial contact. And that really does kind of take people into a place of fear. But contact with these beautiful, benevolent beings that James has been in contact with for 40 years now, that has been diminished, not just by the mainstream media or by the intelligence community, but even in ufology. UFO researchers, they tend to focus on the nuts and bolts and have expanded their purview to look at the abduction phenomenon seriously. And I guess there's reasons for that, but I think one of the reasons why that abduction research has taken off, whereas contactee research, interactions with friendly human-looking extraterrestrials, has not taken off, is that one produces a fear-based reaction. I mean, these small greys or reptilians abducting people in the middle of the night, involuntarily subjecting them to all kinds of medical experiments where eggs and ova are taken out, or these hybrids are created. All of that creates a kind of fear-based response, and that's what the deep state wants. They don't want us to learn about these positive human extraterrestrials. So James has been bravely fighting the good fight, trying to bring that into the public consciousness for 4 decades now. So just watch his latest interview where he talks about that and the urgent message he has for humanity, that what lies ahead is where this reality of positive human-looking extraterrestrials cannot be denied much longer. Okay, so here is something that I thought was very interesting. This is a conversation between Stan Deyo and Bob Lazar. Both of them are whistleblowers. Stan Deyo came out in the 1970s, so in a way he was the first whistleblower to publicly come out talking about the existence of anti-gravity spacecraft that were being secretly reverse engineered. Bob Lazar, he had an experience in the 1980s, late 1980s, where he got to go to S4 and he saw 9 flying saucer craft. And he believed that all 9 were extraterrestrial in origin. Others have said that no, out of those 9, 4 were actually reverse engineered German flying saucer craft. But nevertheless, both Stan Deyo and Bob Lazar, what they have in common is that both of them were connected with Dr. Edward Teller, who was playing a leading role in developing flying saucer technologies. And they described their respective knowledge of Teller's role in such a program. And that kind of like is very important because Dr. Edward Teller, he's associated with the development of thermonuclear weapons. Not many are aware of his involvement in the flying saucer craft, apart from those that have followed Bob Lazar, where Bob Lazar says that it was Edward Teller that got him the job interview with Bechtel. I think it was Bechtel, that was the company, the aerospace company that got him a job at the S4 facility at Area 51. Actually, it may have been another company, but anyway, there was an aerospace company that Bob Lazar was subcontracted by to go work on these flying saucers. So this is a conversation that happened on the Art Bell Coast to Coast show. I assume it was sometime in the 1990s. And this is really a classic. So I'm just going to play the beginning of this so that you can kind of get a sense of this conversation between Bob Lazar and Stan Deyo on Coast to Coast AM. Sometime, here we go, date of interview, September 26, 1997. So 27 years ago, they had this conversation. So let's listen to the first couple of minutes. I think it's worth listening to.
Recruited, I think, by Edward Teller. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who's listening to the show this morning as we speak, believe it or not, all the way down in Perth, Australia. His name is Stan Deyo, and he was also recruited by Edward Teller. And he's got a question or two for you. I'm going to see if we can bring him up. All the way from Perth, Australia, there's a slight delay in the phone line transmission. Stan, are you there?
Yeah, Art.
Okay, very good. Bob Lazar is on the line, and I know you followed the Lazar story, and you might very briefly, recap yours and ask a question.
All right, very briefly. I was working in the computer business in Dallas in I think it was 71. And among other things, I was also doing some investigation for the FBI at the corporations where I was working as an undercover kind of plant. Mm-hmm. During this time at this company where I was working, it was a large corporation. It was called Daltex Optical at the time. It had 100 sub-corporations, and a lot of them operated in Nevada.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop there because the whole clip goes for 15 minutes, but you can go listen to that. It is a very interesting historical conversation between Stan Deyo and Bob Lazar, both of whom discuss the role of Edward Teller in the development of flying saucer technology. So that this happened in 1997. So Edward Teller has been long ago interested or been working on this problem, and this goes back to the 1970s. Stan Deyo says that in the early 1970s, he was taken to an Australian government-funded facility in Fisherman's Bend, Melbourne, and he was shown, or he was asked about his knowledge of anti-gravity technology and building flying saucers, and he saw diagrams and so forth and some classified information that Australia was working on a flying saucer craft. That was in the early 1970s. So people who say, and earlier on I talked about Eric Davis and I talked about Lou Elizondo saying that, well, we do not, that is the United States, does not possess these kinds of flying saucer craft that can perform these kinds of advanced propulsions or maneuvers in the upper atmosphere based on what they know, that in fact in the 1970s there already was a reverse engineering happening in places like Melbourne, that Melbourne, Australia, this Fisherman's Bend facility was actually a subcontractor for the anti-gravity reverse engineering program that Edward Teller was a part of at that time. So it really does kind of like lend credence that the flying saucers or the kind of these UFO craft that have been seen for many decades, that they have been long ago studied and reverse engineered successfully. Okay, here is a story. This concerns drones the size of cars being witnessed for hours in New Jersey near a military facility and interrupting civilian airplane routes. Now, this is very interesting because what's happening here is that there just seems to be more and more of this narrative that is emerging that these drones, these unknown drones or UFOs, the narrative seems to be shifting from UAPs now to drones the size of cars that are unexplained. So that these are being seen near sensitive military facilities. So what I'm going to do now is play this short clip, and you can get a feel for how the UAP issue is now being described in terms of these unexplained drones near military facilities or over military facilities, and how that's a flight hazard or national security threat. So let me play that for you now.
Ernie and Candace, the FAA has placed a temporary restriction on drone flights over Picatinny Arsenal and over Trump National Golf Course in Bedminster. When these drones were first spotted 2 weeks ago, the Morris County Prosecutor's Office said that they posed no known threat to public safety. But people want to know, what the heck are they and what are they doing? It's normal to see red and green lights in December, unless they're coming from mysterious drones in the night sky.
It's kind of unsettling. They're not up for 15 minutes. They're up for hours. Some are very big, probably the size of a car.
Mike Walsh says he's seen hundreds of them over the past 2 weeks from his Randolph backyard and has the video to prove it.
They kind of go slow. They come towards you, then they'll change direction a little. They're all going different ways.
The drones have been spotted all over Morris County. Morristown police sent an alert to residents Sunday saying they are aware of drone activity and that if a drone crashes or lands, do not approach or handle it. The FBI's Newark field office would only say it is working with other law enforcement agencies to figure out what's going on, but at the moment doesn't have enough information to share.
A lot of people want to know what's going on. I think more people are coming around to that, oh, this is going on and maybe it's not good.
Nancy Reed didn't want to show her face on camera, but says she's seen the drones every night since November 18th.
I can see them right out my bedroom window. I can watch them. Last night was about 5:30, so it was earlier. But it's normally anywhere between like 7:30 and 10:30, they're out here. Never during the day. Nobody ever sees them during the day.
One thing she hasn't seen is the normal air traffic she's used to, and she doesn't understand why.
We're in the fly pattern going to like Morristown Airport and Newark, and we used to see a lot of planes coming back and forth. You don't see them anymore.
So there you have these unexplained drones that are being seen near the residence of these New Jersey witnesses. It's very close to a military facility. The civilian airplane route from Newark Airport, Morristown Airport, that they have been interrupted in some way. And people are being told not to approach any downed drones. So is this all part of a kind of psychological operation? What is going on here? It is very suspicious. But let's look at another roundup of the drone phenomenon. This comes from Redacted, and Clayton Morris talks about this. He gives a short summary of what is going on. So let's hear how this is
of investigation.
Let's hear how Clayton Morris describes the incidents of these drones, these unexplained UFOs, UAPs appearing in New Jersey, and what all that means. And he asks the direct question, is this part of a UFO invasion? What else is going on here?
Well, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, is focusing on something very, very important today. It is December 3rd. It is Alien Invasion Day. Of course, now this comes from an individual who had accurately predicted that the Indonesian tsunami would strike. I think it was, 2003? And he was spot on about that. He said December 3rd, that's when it's going to happen again. And it's very interesting that over the past 72 hours or so, we've seen so many different reports around the world, the UK and the United States specifically, of all of these UFO incursions. Massive And remember, UFO just means unidentified flying object. Are they Chinese? Are they Russian? Are they aliens? We don't have a freaking clue. But here is New Jersey last night. People, they're terrified as they looked up in the sky and saw 10-foot sized drones like hovering all over areas across New Jersey. Watch.
Involved in an investigation into these mysterious, apparently small.
Well, I don't want to play that, play what's going up in New Jersey again, but you get the idea that this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's happening in New Jersey, the United States. It's happening in the United Kingdom, and it's happening around the world. And so, is this all part of a psychological operation? Is it a genuine UFO invasion? Or is it another possibility? The one that I think we need to look at is it also associated in some way with positive extraterrestrials showing up. I mean, I have been interviewing a number of contactees, and they say that positive extraterrestrials are revealing themselves more often. And that's because they want people to connect. They want people to feel comfortable with UFOs. So if you think about it, well, if positive extraterrestrials are revealing themselves more, then wouldn't the deep state unleash these unexplained UFOs and just kind of like create confusion over exactly what is being seen, and doing it in a way that raises fear because their UFOs are appearing near military bases? There's possibility that this is associated with espionage. So people are getting very confused. So could it be both? Could it be that this is a psyop, or is it because positive extraterrestrials are showing up and the legacy media, the deep state, they do not want the public figuring that out? Okay, so here is an example of what I was talking about. So there's a video, and let me play this video for you. Well, it was taken on November 30, 2024, and Elena asks if the video is genuine. These days on social media, you can never be sure if a video is genuine or not, but let's just assume that it is genuine. Then she correctly points out, this is the video. The video is playing down here, and I'll maximize it in a moment, but you can see the shape of the UFO craft. And this is very similar to a flying saucer craft that JP photographed in 2018 in Orlando, Florida. So let's now show you the craft. Okay, there you have it. Is it real? Is it CGI? I mean, you have to ask that question these days, but let's assume that it is real. Then it is very, very similar to the flying saucer craft that JP interacted with in 2018. He talked to the occupant of one of these craft, or in this particular incident, he saw two beings inside of it. Another incident, he saw a craft that landed that was very, very similar to this craft that appeared, that was taken in that video of a UFO over Brooklyn Bridge on November 30, so just a week ago. So yes, so I think this is something else we have to consider, that you can have both these human-looking extraterrestrials, positive extraterrestrials, revealing themselves. This is one of the things that JP, ex-US Army, has been on a number of covert missions where he has met and interacted with these beings, with these Nordic human-looking beings, and they've said that they're going to be revealing themselves more and more in the months ahead. So that's possibly what we are seeing now with the increase in the UFO or in these kind of drone incursions. But on the other hand, I think you probably have the deep state also trying to muddy the waters, trying to create confusion and releasing their own craft. They could be just drones, just to confuse things, just to muddy the waters so people aren't certain. And so that's where we are at the moment. We're at a time of great uncertainty because there's a lot of UFOs that are being seen. For the first time, the legacy media is reporting on them. The US Congress is holding hearings on them. There's an office that's been created in the Pentagon to analyze these reports. But what you're getting from official institutions is, well, we don't know what they are. They are real. They're a national security threat. Some whistleblowers are saying that they are related to these crashed UFOs that have been taken over the past. But we're clear about one thing, that they're not ours. I mean, that's the line that Lou Elizondo, Dr. Eric Davis, and many others are saying. Okay, so here is an article that talks. Oh, here, let me go here. So George Knapp, he explains how whistleblowers have been ignored by the AARO office. That's the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and the House Oversight Subcommittee chose to do likewise in their recent UAP hearing. So this is something that George Knapp discussed in a interview he did, and I think it's worth just playing the first minute or so of that interview so you get a sense of what it is that the AARO office and the US Congress are not doing when it comes to seriously investigating the UFO phenomenon.
These members of Congress, Nancy Mace, saying, we've been told we can't ask questions about XYZ. Told by who? Who told you? What questions can't you ask? Not very clear. They had that hearing. They were offered direct hands-on whistleblowers. I can tell you that for sure. They didn't take the offer. There's that 11, 12-page report that was submitted to the record. Jeremy Corbell is the one that gave it to him. I know because I had read it and helped in preparing them, putting it together. And Jeremy gave it to them the night before. He showed it to Michael Schellenberger. He had never seen it. The committee thanks Michael in open hearing. Thank you for giving us that report. Michael didn't give it to him. He had never seen it before. Jeremy gave it to him. They distorted that. There were people in the room who were watching them, so they didn't ask certain questions. They have been unable to get a skiff to take some of these whistleblowers in. What the hell's the problem in Congress members getting a skiff so they can hear sensitive matters? I don't understand it. I don't understand who's pulling all the strings here, but I suspect it's the same people that have always been pulling these strings. Congress, I think, is a direct threat. They have subpoena power. All
right. Well, let's stop there. But you can watch this full clip by just going to my Twitter feed, and you'll find it in the in this last week. It's there, and you can hear George Knapp discuss how Congress has been offered a number of whistleblowers who are willing to testify about what's really going on, and that they didn't take the offer. And that's what very interesting in that last UFO hearing that was held in the US Congress. That's before the House Oversight Committee. There was two subcommittees that held a hearing with four whistleblowers. With four witnesses. There was Lou Elizondo, Michael Schellenberger, Admiral Tim Gallaudet, and a former NASA deputy administrator, Mike Gold. None of them are whistleblowers. Now, all of them are either experts, or in the case of Lou Elizondo, he ran this informal ATIP office in the Pentagon for a number of years while doing his regular job. And so none of them are whistleblowers. And so George Knapp says that the whistleblowers who know about the classified reverse engineering programs, that they aren't being called upon, and that even though there are SCIF facilities for them to be interviewed, that they're not being taken to those SCIF facilities by members of Congress to be interviewed. And what's also very interesting in this clip, was that he was pointing out that it was actually Jeremy Corbell that got his hands on this document called Immaculate Constellation and handed it off to the Congress. But instead, Congress chose to acknowledge Michael Schellenberger, an investigative journal, as the person who got his hands on that document. So it seems that there's some misattribution, and I guess Jeremy Corbell isn't being given a fair shake by the Congress when it comes to his role in sharing these classified or sharing these sensitive documents or knowledge about different whistleblowers. So all very interesting. Here's a interview I did with Barbara Lamb on the hybrid dilemma. And Barbara has spent over 3 decades. She began in 1991 doing hypnotherapy on experiences, on people who have had a contact with typically these grey extraterrestrials, but not exclusively grey extraterrestrials. And she described having worked with over 3,000 people in 5,000 sessions on doing this kind of hypnotherapy with extraterrestrial experiences. Now, she has tremendous experience when it comes to helping people get over their traumatic experiences with these grey-looking or other extraterrestrials. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that Barbara is a hypnotherapist. Prior to that, she was a psychotherapist. And so her role is to help people integrate and deal with these traumatic experiences in ways that promote healing. And so that has led to her taking a position on the extraterrestrial abduction phenomenon, which those that come from another discipline will find odd or disagree with entirely. And so, for example, she believes that based on her regression work with these 3,000 individuals, even though many of them describe traumatic incidents where they are taken involuntarily onto spacecraft, that they are subjected to medical experiments without permission, that anal probes are conducted, semen and eggs are extracted, and that they are part of the creation of these hybrids and sometimes even get to hold or witness their hybrid children, that this is all something that people can reconcile as part of their soul contract. And that's a very controversial idea, that you help people understand that it's their soul contract to be subjected to these experiences, that even though their free will is violated, that still they agreed to this because this would make them a better person or help them develop certain skills. Well, that's very controversial, and people can bring up examples of, well, can't you say the same for criminals that abduct people and home invasions or something, rape or something, that, this is all part of a soul contract you made with that criminal pre-life and so forth. So, it's a very controversial idea. But what I think is very important is that, and I'd raised it in our interview, is that there are extraterrestrials, the Greys are a part of a group that who operate without getting the free will consent of those that they are interacting with. Whereas on the other hand, there are these other extraterrestrials, typically human-looking extraterrestrials, that do require or do ask for consent. And that's a very important distinction, I think. And I think it's very important because if we're going to choose between friend and foe, who are those that are really acting in our best interest? Are we going to trust those that are doing these abductions, those that are subjecting people to these involuntary genetic experiments, or do we trust those that meet us with respect, ask our permission, and take us on board their craft and share information? I think most people would say, well, the latter naturally are the ones that we can trust more. And I think this is a very important thing, that we need to be very discerning here. And I think free will consent is not something that should be ignored or something that should be superseded by some kind of very nebulous idea of a soul contract that, is another way of reviewing or considering a soul contract is just the Stockholm syndrome, that you are in a situation where you have to reconcile the fact that you've been abducted, kidnapped, and so you do it in a way that promotes self-healing. So I have a very different opinion about the hybrid phenomenon. I mean, Barbara Lamb believes that the hybrids are something to be welcomed, that they have these new skills or these enhanced psychic skills and abilities that can help humanity evolve into a higher kind of human, Homo numinous or something along those lines. And those such as Dr. David Jacobs, who say that these hybrids are a threat. And Elena Danan is another contactee, and she has also made the same point, that these hybrids are a threat. Now, in my next week, I'm going to be I'll be releasing an interview with a researcher who has reached a very interesting perspective or understanding of the hybrid phenomenon, and that it is something that has failed, that is an experiment that has failed. But more about that next week. All right, here we have an announcement concerning the appointment or the nomination of the next administrator for NASA. And this is a billionaire who was part of the first private spacewalk for Elon Musk's SpaceX. So this is Jared Isaacman, who is a billionaire, and he was part of that SpaceX mission in September 2021, where he performed the first spacewalk. Now, what's very interesting about Jared Isaacson is that he went up into space in September 2021, and this is around the same time period when Elon Musk was allegedly part of a covert series of secret meetings taking place above Jupiter. And that there were these organizations, the Ashtar Command, the Galactic Federations of Worlds, meeting with the representatives of 14 spacefaring nations who were part of these meetings and agreements taking place up there in Jupiter, or high up in Jupiter's atmosphere, that would decide how the solar system was going to be governed by humanity, that humanity was given custodianship of the solar system. And there appeared to be a very clear-cut distinction between older corporations such as Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, that were part of the cover-up, that were for decades building anti-gravity craft for secret space programs, a distinction between them and these newer companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origins, Virgin Galactic might be another one, that are trying to release new space technologies to humanity to get us to technological level. So Jared Isaacman, I think he is part of this initiative by SpaceX, by Elon Musk, to release some of the most advanced technologies possible to kind of get us up to the point where humanity is ready to openly welcome extraterrestrials. I think this is part of the reason why these these highly evolved galactics have not openly revealed themselves to our global civilization, is because they understand that our level of technology still hasn't reached the point where we would not view extraterrestrials revealing themselves without a kind of tremendous amount of awe, or kind of like something that could translate into religious feelings that could be easily exploited. So I think this is why it's so important for SpaceX and NASA to work in tandem to release some of these advanced technologies that have been long suppressed. So this is, I think, a very positive development. Okay, so here's an interview I did with Danny Henderson on the UFO cover-up and how the cover-up has been conducted, and me being nominated to play some kind of role in the Trump administration. That Robert Kennedy Jr. set up a website where people could be nominated to fulfill positions within the Trump administration. The last I checked, I had several thousand people that endorsed my nomination. So I'm not sure where it's going to go. I haven't heard anything from the Kennedy from Robert Kennedy or from the Trump administration. But I think it is significant that there are people in this incoming Trump administration that are looking for outsiders to come in and do things. And if in my case, it would be probably to promote transparency when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. So, yeah, that interview is on Danny Henderson's YouTube channel. Here is a short clip that gives us an idea of exactly what happened in a classified briefing that was given on Friday morning. That is December 6th, Friday morning. Dr. John Kozlowski, the Arrow director, gave a classified briefing to members of Congress, and apparently some of the information concerned the shapes of these unexplained UFOs, which for some strange reason, that is classified. So here is what Representative Nancy Mace, who chaired the House Oversight Committee's subcommittee dealing with national security, here's what she had to say about this classified meeting or classified briefing that she was given and what she was told. So let me play that for you.
It did not come up. We talked about it, several different UAPs that have been in the press or leaked. Most of those have been explained, and they explained how they came to that conclusion. But there are ones that we discussed that are unexplained. And they have a plan, they say, to disclose and declassify how they came to that conclusion and why there's still objects that are unanswered.
You mentioned the shapes. What is it about the shapes of these drones?
There are certain shapes that are unexplained, that are in the air. I'm in a classified setting, so I will let Arrow, I don't want to cross over and disclose classified information, but there are certain shapes consistently that are unexplained, which is fascinating.
Okay, well, there you have it. Apparently, the Arrow director has decided, or maybe other officials above him have decided, that the shape of these UFOs that have been photographed or videotaped or that are in the Arrow's investigations, that this is classified. I mean, can it get any more ridiculous than that? Somehow the shape of these craft is a classified matter. I mean, wouldn't that actually help with the public identifying what these are? And wouldn't it be more cynical? And here Nancy Mace, she seems to kind of go along with this. I mean, what about the flight characteristics of these craft? I mean, how fast did they travel, and did they perform and kind of like G maneuvers that signify that these are clearly non-human or something other that would give us an idea of their origins. I thought that was interesting, that it would really just get members of Congress to focus on the shape of these craft, but that's classified, that they receive a classified briefing telling them about the shape, and that's fascinating to them, but they can't reveal anything more than that. So I guess the Arrow office is doing a kind of good job in just keeping people in the dark about what is going on. And I think this is something that I have noticed over the last few week-in reviews, that the clear pattern that is emerging here is that public officials, whether they're with Arrow, whether they're with Congress, whether they're with the legacy media, whether they're with the intelligence community, that they are pushing forward this narrative that UFOs are real, they're a national security threat, but we don't know what they are. They could be anything, but we know that they're not our craft. We haven't reverse engineered these craft, so we don't know. They could be Chinese, they could be Russian, they could be extraterrestrials, they could be cryptoterrestrials. We don't know. And I think this, to me, is part of a narrative of confusion, trying to create confusion, trying to distract people from what's really going on. And I think this is the strategy. Now, whether that's going to lead to a false flag event, or whether that's going to lead to benevolent extraterrestrials revealing themselves, we don't know. I mean, I think this is what's happening. Both things are happening at the same time. I think the deep state is making its move. The white hats are countering with their move. So you can have both things happening simultaneously. And maybe that's the reason why the false flag alien invasion hasn't gone ahead, because the deep state knows that if they do that, then the white hats, the Earth Alliance, will kind of, in a jiu-jitsu move, turn that around. And rather than we being attacked by these unknown UFOs, it's like, oh, here are these craft. They belong to this advanced off-world civilization called the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and they're making contact. Isn't that a wonderful thing? So we don't know. So that is those are the top stories from this week's Week in Review. Now, later on today, at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time, which is 11 o'clock Pacific Time, I will be holding my next monthly briefing. So what will happen in that monthly briefing? In that monthly briefing, I'll cover the top 5 exopolitics news stories over the last 4 weeks. I will be giving you an idea of some of the upcoming interviews that will be released over the next week on Patreon. And so you get a preview into those issues that are raised. I will go over unfolding geopolitical events, how these different conflicts or events happening around the world are related to the UFO exopolitics phenomenon. And also I'll be doing quite a deep dive into the incoming Trump administration and what we can expect from them when it comes to UFO and extraterrestrial disclosure and the release of suppressed technologies. President Trump, in his first administration, made some very significant moves towards these kinds of disclosures, and I'll be talking about that and presenting much more information about what to expect. Now, and that monthly briefing, that will finish up with up to an hour of Q&A. So the whole thing will go for about 2 to 2.5 hours, somewhere in that range, depending on questions and how much material I have to present. And you can do it, you can register in 2 ways. You can register by becoming a Patreon subscriber and joining at the Solar patron level, or you can just go to Crowdcast and register without being a solar patron, and it's just a one-off deal. The benefit of doing it as a solar patron is that you get access to past webinars, plus you get a discount to my future webinars where I have panels, a panel where we do a deep dive into a lot of these issues. So that's it for the Week in Review for December 7. I hope you can join me in my monthly briefing later on today. So links are in the description. Thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.